his lectures. We're honored to have you here as we discuss and debate a wide variety of issues and topics, and we welcome you. If you'll notice at the back of the room, you'll see a map of where our students will be going for their international public service projects this summer. You'll notice that we're doing a special project for the First Lady of Arkansas, Ginger Beebe, who is taking on the cause of reading in the elementary schools. And each of our students are taking a Flat Stanley with them. You're familiar with the Flat Stanley character. And that Flat Stanley will go with the students as they travel abroad. So you can look at that later. You have a list on your table of upcoming programs at the school, and we certainly invite you to participate. We ask only one thing, and that is that you RSVP so that we can maintain the right number of seats. To introduce our speaker today is a good friend of mine. He is a graduate of Little Rock Central High School, a graduate of Middlebury College, where he had a professor who happens to be speaking today, and a graduate of Georgetown University Law School. After practicing law for some time, he moved back to Little Rock, where he and his wife now reside with their 2 children. He is a money manager, but more importantly, he is working very hard on the Little Rock Film Festival, which we are proud to co-sponsor. And he's doing great work with that, and we'll have part of those films here. So would you welcome a Middlebury College alumnus, Owen Kramer.
Thank you, Skip. That's a kind introduction. Well, about 15 years ago, my arrival at Middlebury College as a first-year student coincided with a young, smart, popular history professor being named president of Middlebury College. That professor was John McCardell. Everyone was excited at the school. It was going to be a new era. He was a fresh face. Things were moving in the right direction. I, on the other hand, was excited for a little bit more selfish reasons. I thought that in running triage with my first year schedule of courses, that maybe history could be a class that I potentially skimmed the material rather than really gave it the full embrace that Middlebury generally demands of the students. I was wrong. And I want to share with you John's take on my skimming. I mean, how would a professor run a class and be president of college at the same time, I thought? Well, what I have are my blue book exams from John's class. And these are dated December 92 and October 92. He gave 2 exams that year. Of one of my better essays, John wrote, "Need to work on precision. The essay is a bit vague." Of my other exam, he had 2 memorable comments. One, conclusion, with a very large question mark. Some good info, some analysis, a bit off the mark. And finally, at the very conclusion of the essay, needs better focus. In short, I was very wrong to underestimate John McCardell. I thought this man really is being both a very good professor and a very good president. And when I heard about the new issue that he is here to speak about today, I thought there's no better person to bring to the table of just open debate, honest hard work, focus, and analysis than John McCardell. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce someone who's been both a professor and the president of the college I was at, and now a very good friend. Ladies and gentlemen, John McCardell.
Owen, thank you very much. I think that was a very, very generous introduction. And the longer one is in academia, the more frequently one is reminded about the great truth once uttered by Henry Adams. In the Education of Henry Adams, that a teacher touches eternity. He can never tell where his influence stops. Now, I doubt that when he wrote those immortal words, Henry Adams had ever encountered or ever expected to encounter a former student representing that eternity appearing on the scene with a blue book. But we're reminded in a multitude of ways how the relationship between teacher and student is not just a 4-year proposition, but a relationship that lasts a lifetime. An experience that has been my very good fortune to have in 31 years at Middlebury College, and that I'm quite certain represents your own recollections of your own educational experiences as well. And in fact, it is owing to just those kinds of relationships that brings me here for this event this afternoon. And I want to express my gratitude not simply to Owen for that very generous introduction, but in particular to Skip and Blake Rutherford, two other longtime and dear friends of the McCardell family and of Middlebury College. And I have never ceased to be impressed by Skip's energy, his commitment, his devotion to whatever the task at hand might be. And I have been witness over the course of that friendship, and even more vividly over the course of my visit here this time, to the fruits of those labors. In my own modest way, I reciprocate the many things he has done for our college in my appearance here today. I'm grateful for the invitation, and hope this measures up. You set a very high standard in the program that you have here and in all that you've undertaken. I'm going to talk for a few minutes about an issue with which I have actually been engaged for quite some time, but to which I have more recently come at a much higher level of engagement and involvement through a series of not entirely predictable circumstances. But I also know that time is precious, and that part of what gives an event like this a particular significance is the chance to take questions from the audience and to hear your reactions to some of the things that I'm about to say. So I will try to be as brief, as succinct as I can be. As I tell you a little bit about a new organization that is all of 3 months old, a nonprofit that was established to begin to raise public awareness of and engage the public in a discussion of the effects of legal age 21. And that organization is called Choose Responsibility. And lest I forget, later in these remarks, you might learn more about us by going to www.chooseresponsibility.org, a website that is all of 2 weeks old, but that we think offers a great deal of information about what is, in my view at least, and I suspect in yours as well, or any of yours as well, one of the most serious issues facing us as a society in our time. Shortly after stepping down as president of Middlebury, I wrote an op-ed essay for the New York Times. And in 750 words, approximately 700 proved to be not in any way memorable. One learns about the evanescence of fame when one sees an essay appear in so distinguished a publication one day, and then realizes that the next day's coffee grounds are probably being deposited into it as it's placed either into the garbage or the recycling pile. But there were about 50 words in that essay that did resonate, and began to give you the first clue that the issue that I want to speak with you about briefly today was one that is, in fact, very much on the public mind. The title of that essay was What Your College President Never Told You. And in a couple of paragraphs, I observed that legal age 21, in my view, from my perspective, has turned out to be bad social policy and terrible law. Not much ambiguity there, I will confess, but when you're limited to 750 words, you need to choose them carefully and be as simple and direct and as forceful as you can. And in fact, I believed it then, and I believe it now. I want to talk with you a bit about how that simple observation has transformed itself into an organization that is beginning to engage in a national discussion about legal age 21. And this is a good case of one not seeking fame, but rather having fame thrust upon one. I got a number of emails and letters in response to that essay. And one of them came from a man named Julian Robertson, a name you may recognize. He's a man who is a very successful investor and a very generous philanthropist in New York. And he called me up out of the blue and said, "I read your article. Like what you had to say about the drinking age. What are we going to do about it?" "Oh, Mr. Robertson, I'm not sure what we're going to do about it. I've delivered myself with this opinion, and I had thought that was that." "Oh," he said, "I think we need to talk more about this. This is a serious issue." And he went on to explain to me that while many of the arguments that you will hear, that I'll briefly summarize for you this afternoon, persuaded him, what had finally given him the call to action on the subject was a very interesting and quite specific occurrence. And that was an announcement by the University of Virginia, famous for its all-inclusive student-administered honor system, that the possession of a fake ID would no longer fall within the purview of the honor system. That announcement, that discovery, said to him that this law and its effects are breeding ethical compromises and creating challenges that go far beyond the intended consequences of the enactment, and that, if left unchecked and unaddressed, pose very serious issues for the ways in which we rear the rising generation of leaders. Misrepresentation of oneself is no longer an honor violation. That's where he was coming from. Over the course of the succeeding year, a number of conversations took place, at the end of which I drew the short straw, was asked to prepare a white paper with the Foundation's support on the effects of legal age 21. That project occupied most of the academic year 2005-06. We turned the white paper in last fall, and on the basis of that, the Foundation provided us with some seed money, approximately half of what we need to stay in business beyond this year, I might add, to create the 501c3 that now bears the name Choose Responsibility, and that has as its goal the testing of some of the findings that are in that white paper. A paper that is still being circulated privately in the spirit of peer review. It has not been published, and it's not been published for a very good reason. It is still a work in progress, and we are sharing it with an ever-widening circle of people with particular expertise on this issue to get their reactions, in hopes that when the publication finally does appear, it will be even more compelling than we believe in draft form it already is. Legal age 21 was enacted in 1984. It was signed into law by President Reagan in July of that year, and though it was only one of 39 recommendations made by a presidential commission that had been at work for several years on the subject of alcohol, and in particular drunken driving, it clearly was the centerpiece, it clearly was the cornerstone of a campaign that had in view the reduction in the number of alcohol-related traffic fatalities. One need only go back to reports emanating from the day of the signing ceremony to see it abundantly clear, simple, and straightforward. Raising the age from 18 to 21 is going to reduce the number of alcohol-related traffic fatalities. The President said that, the Secretary of Transportation said that, the principal sponsors, the principal advocates of the law, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, said that. What the record will show is very, very clear. In the years since 1984, the number of alcohol-related traffic fatalities has in fact declined. It has declined in every age group. And it is a decline that began several years before the law was passed. During that same period of time, Other consequences, less intended, have also materialized as a result of legal age 21. We need to talk about those, and I will in a moment. But I want first to address the question of alcohol-related traffic fatalities. There's no question that the number has declined. It's declined in all age groups, and it's declined pretty much consistently over the time period. The highest number of fatalities, however, is now 21, followed by 22, followed by 23. We need to explain that somehow, and perhaps in the course of our discussion we can return to that statistical data. But the explanation of why that decline has occurred, it seems to me, is much more complex than has sometimes been argued. In 1984, the term designated driver was not known. In 1984, mandatory seatbelts were not a law. In 1984, we didn't have airbags. And in 1984, we were not particularly well educated or well informed as a society about the risks incurred when one drinks and drives. Over the course of the last 22 years, we have seen remarkable, indeed extraordinary changes in all of those things, in all of those areas. And perhaps the most successful of all of the things that I've mentioned is the much greater awareness all of us have about the risks we incur when we mix drinking and driving. The lion's share of the credit for that extraordinary achievement goes to our friends at Mothers Against Drunk Driving. It proves a great many things. One of the things it proves is that education works. This is clearly a successful experiment in public education. But it also reminds us that there are many explanations for that statistical truth. Furthermore, lives can be lost to alcohol other than on the highways. And in fact, research has shown that as many as 3 times as many lives are lost to alcohol other than on the highways. Those lives are no less precious. Those loved ones are no less bereaved. And the search for an explanation for that loss of life also needs to continue. And that leads us, it seems to me, into an examination of some of the other effects of legal age 21 that I think represent unintended consequences. Briefly put, let me state what those are. First of all, legal age 21 addresses an issue in a way that abridges the age of majority. Whether we like it or not, our laws have determined that upon reaching the age of 18, a person becomes an adult. All of the privileges and all of the responsibilities of adulthood are assumed when one turns 18. You can vote, you can sign a contract, you can serve on a jury, you can lay your life on the line for your country in combat. You can't have your grave sent home to your parents without your permission. You can't have your health records sent home to your parents without your permission. There is only one single exception, and that's the drinking age. Indeed, the senator from our state then and now voted against legal age 21 because he believed it was age discrimination. You can call it what you will. It clearly makes an exception in this one instance and says to young adults age 18 that in all respects but one, you're an adult. This, by the way, is being said to a generation whose temperament is very different from the temperament of my generation and perhaps also of yours. If you believe anything that has been written about the generational temperament of the so-called millennials, young people born since 1980, you will discover that theirs is a very different outlook. Among other things, they don't mind being in the presence of adults. Among other things, they have very good relationships with their parents. Unlike those of us of a certain age and generation whose goal it was to eliminate anything that smacked of in loco parentis, and who coined the term generation gap, these young people actually like being with adults. And imagine how it must sound to them to be told, as they are, in justification of this discriminatory law, that lack judgment, you lack maturity, your brain is not sufficiently developed to allow you to make responsible decisions. That doesn't fit with the influences that have shaped them or with the realities of the world they inhabit. In fact, the reality of the world they inhabit includes alcohol. Alcohol, believe it or not, my friends, is a reality in the lives of 18, 19, and 20-year-olds. If the law meant what it said in 1984, it meant to prohibit, not minimize, not wink wink, it meant to prohibit purchase, possession, and consumption of alcohol by anyone under the age of 21. It has utterly failed to do that. Alcohol is a reality in the lives of 18, 19, and 20-year-olds, and prohibition doesn't work. Prohibition can't work. Prohibition has never worked. And the goal of public policy, it seems to me, unless you deny one of those two simple assumptions, ought to be to create the safest possible environment for that reality to take place in. And a serious question before us, that it seems to me, is whether legal age 21 creates the safest possible environment. Or ought we to continue to try to create an environment of prohibition, which doesn't work. The reality on college campuses these days, and I believe the reality beyond college campuses, has been asserted that this is a Ivy League problem, but that in the rest of America, legal age 21 is working pretty well. Well, Arkansans, you tell me if this is only an Ivy League problem. I'd really like to hear your response to that. Highest rate of underage drinking is in North Dakota. That's not Ivy League America. This is a national problem, and playing the class card on this, it does little to advance the discussion. This is an issue in all age groups, in all sectors of society. Binge drinking has been identified by several experts in the field of public health as the most serious public health crisis facing our country today. We may disagree over what binge drinking is, but there is no question in the research that even though fewer young people these days may be choosing to drink, those who are choosing to drink are drinking more recklessly. And worse than that, to the degree that enforcement of legal age 21 is effective, that drinking is taking place behind closed doors, underground, off campus, in dark corners. Is that the safest possible environment? Now, in response to that, there are those who will say, well, all we need to do is enforce the law. If we just enforce the law, we can solve this binge drinking problem. Well, here's another statistic. Of every 1,000 violations of legal age 21, 2 result in arrests. 2 out of 1,000. So, do we quadruple? Do we quintuple the amount of money we spend on enforcement? The amount of people we deploy to enforce the law? How much more do we spend? How many more people do we hire so as to get to 10 out of 1,000, or 12 out of 1,000, or 20 out of 1,000? The law is being routinely, systematically violated. It is perceived clearly to be unjust and unworkable, and the evidence would seem to indicate unenforceable law. And yet we continue to live in this fantasy world that this law is working and is effective. We need to look at all of its consequences. Abridgment of the age of majority is one of those consequences. Binge drinking, abusive and reckless drinking is a second. And by the way, lives are lost in those dark corners. There are parents of a young man who died of alcohol poisoning at the University of Colorado 2 years ago. And they're certainly not going to assert and haven't asserted that legal age 21 was responsible for their son's death. But what they have said, and what the purpose of the foundation that they have established in their son's memory clearly says, is that legal age 21 created and creates environments on college campus that are conducive to the kind of behavior that led to their son's death. A life no less precious than if he had lost it on the interstate. Binge drinking, abridgment of majority, legal age 21 is arguably anti-family. I come to this issue because as both a parent and as a college president, I see the reality, the impossible choices that this law imposes. And there are really only two, and neither one is acceptable. The one choice is to look the other way. Is to look the other way when you're responsible for a campus of young adults. Wink, wink. We know what's going on. We're looking the other way. Look the other way when your child comes home for Thanksgiving or Christmas and wants to have a beer while you're watching a football game. And so you say, well, you know what? There can be no safer place for you to be doing this than at home with us. After which, you might as well say, and oh, by the way, if you don't feel like fastening your seatbelt when you go out tonight, that's okay too, because in this household, we choose what laws we're going to obey. Or you take the other impossible position, and you become an arm of the law as a college president or as a parent, and you say, law applies here just as it does everywhere else. Well, of course, that means 2 out of 1,000 are going to get picked up. But in fact, the law applies here. No drinking here, no drinking on campus. Our campus is dry. This house is dry for you. We know as parents perfectly well what the result will be. Behind closed doors, underground, somewhere else, less supervised. Alcohol is a reality in the lives of 18, 19, and 20-year-olds. Prohibition doesn't work. The safest possible environment should be built upon the place. But parents are effectively marginalized. Parents are disenfranchised by legal age 21. And the more successful it is, the more complete is that disenfranchisement. And then finally, there are ethical problems of the sort Mr. Robertson identified. Every time a person presents a false ID, every time a person misrepresents himself or herself as a way of circumventing this law that they clearly perceive as unjust, and that they are clearly, deliberately seeking to violate, another chink in the ethical armor is made. I had a district attorney in Denver say to me not long ago, well, out here, that's forgery, and forgery is a felony. Is it too extravagant a claim to say that legal age 21 may well result in more felony charges on the records of young adults? And is that a desirable outcome? My view is that you get the level of behavior you expect, and if we expect responsible adult behavior from young adults, we're more likely to realize it. Is the problem of underage drinking going to go away? No. Will there still be alcohol-related traffic fatalities? Yes. Can we create a perfect world? No. The Garden of Eden took care of that, and we're imperfect human beings. And the policies we frame are the best we can do to make the world a bit less than perfect. The proposal to choose responsibility as advanced, and here I'll stop and open the floor for questions, is very simple. First of all, we believe Congress should decouple the federal highway fund condition from the right of the state to set a drinking age. Right now, it's 21. If you lower it, you forfeit 10% of your federal highway appropriation. That's called incentive. Other words come to mind, but the official word is incentive. Congress should turn this back to the states, but not just so the age is lower. The states need to come forward with a plan to prepare young adults to be responsible with regard to alcohol. And our view is that education and licensing is the appropriate approach. When the age went from 18 to 21, the age at which young people had their first encounter with alcohol did not change. To say that if we go from 21 to 18, will increase underage drinking. First of all, it's hard to imagine that it could be any worse than it is now. But there's no evidence to show that the age of first encounter went up when the age went up, and there's no more reason to suppose that the age will go down if the age is lower. But if there's education, and if there's incentive in the form of a license, maybe, just maybe, we can begin to get at some of the problem of underage drinking in our schools and in our society. As long as you stay clean, you take the course, you receive your license, you're an adult. First violation, license is revoked. I have enough confidence in this generation of young people, and I say this as a parent and as an educator, to believe that if we expect responsible adult behavior of them, we're apt to get that in return. If we infantilize them, we oughtn't to be surprised when we see infantile behavior. What are we afraid of? How can we possibly say that the status quo is acceptable and that the way things are is the best we can do? I think we can do better. I think the status quo is unacceptable. I don't claim to have all the answers, but I do insist that it's time to reopen what for far too long has been a settled question, to look at all of the consequences, only some of which are quantifiable, then to make an informed and dispassionate decision in the realm of public policy. I realize not everybody agrees with me, and I certainly realize that the data are not all on one side of this question. I respect immensely the accomplishments of those who disagree with us and the many successes they have had, particularly in showing that education works. And I'd like to think that when we come to the end of this discussion, we'll all be on the same side. Let me stop there. Thank you for your time and attention, and open the floor to questions.
All right, any questions? Yes, we have some.
What does the MAAD think about this issue?
Excuse me?
What does the MAAD think about
I
this
think you mean MADD. Mothers Against Drunk Driving? Yes. I would not presume to speak for MAD. If there's someone from MAD present, I would ask them to answer that question. I can say that we had discussions with the leadership of Mothers Against Drunk Driving. We agree that we're all against drunk driving. We agree that the current situation is deplorable. I'm very intrigued by and inclined to be supportive of their latest campaign for the Ignition Interlock device. But it would not be appropriate for me to give their opinion on my proposal.
Any other questions? Yes.
Let me say first of all, as a mother of 16, 18, 20-year-olds, I really agree with everything that you're saying. I turned 21 in 1980, and so I remember 1984, and I see no difference in my children in college and my experience in college where we were actually legal. One question I have, well, actually, it's a two-part question. How likely do you think this is that the United States government will not tie the drinking age in a state to their highway funds? Number two, when I've had lots of discussions about this. One of my children in particular has come really into this law. He's at a university, but it's the second striker out. And it's a long story. Anyway, most children now, it seems, are 19 or at least close to it when they get to college. Would you think there would be any more palatable response to 19? I understand the 18, and I agree with all those points, but the 19 versus the 18, and the like.
That's a great question. And we support 18 simply because of consistency. But I think to turn that around, if being inconsistent with the age of majority is okay, then there's nothing magical about 21. It could be higher, it could be lower. And the debate that I hope will take place on the state level will engage those questions, and I think that that's a very genuine
Yeah,
debate.
especially when it was not 21, the new states were 18 and we were 19.
Right.
So that was the concern.
Right. As to the likelihood of this ever happening, well, I don't undertake fool's errands, but I also know that this is not something that's going to happen overnight or easily. It is most likely to happen, however, and we are taking this approach for that reason. It is most likely to happen to the degree that members of the public are willing to speak up, as you have spoken of, and say, you know what, this isn't just limited to Ivy League America. This isn't just limited. This is a serious national problem, and it's as important in Arkansas and in Nebraska and in Michigan as it is in Vermont. Public officials will listen to that, and that's how you get change.
Got a question, Julie?
Well, I'm from a college town, Stillwater, Oklahoma, which has a state. And we have serious problems with college students and also serious problems with high school drinking, probably junior high too. And I'm wondering, they had these massive parties, one kid shot another one in the head or one of these things. I'm wondering how much more access this would give, seems to me, to the high school kids, because they all, some of them in high school are 18 years old.
Well, let me give you a couple of examples, one of which I simply would repeat, that raising the age seemed to have no effect on the age of onset. So there's no reason to suppose bringing it down would either. Secondly, the examples you're citing are hardly proof that legal age 21 is working. But less flip and more substantively, let me tell you a story that I think is relevant. And it has to do with the speed limit. And it has to do with how we deploy our enforcement personnel and resources and mechanisms. First of all, hard as it may seem to believe, alcohol education is mandatory only after you've been convicted of DUI. Now, think, does that really make much sense? Oughtn't it to occur earlier, maybe in hopes of reducing the number of DUI incidents? We think so. And we think that there could be a redeployment of resources and personnel that would largely cover the cost of that proposal. But secondly, the speed limit example is a good one. We had a 55-mile-an-hour national speed limit until the late 80s. Congress finally thought, you know what, maybe we should turn this back to the states and let them set the limit. Oh, the hands were raised in horror. The hands were speed, kills, bodies are going to pile up on the highways. This is a terrible idea. Well, Congress did it anyway, and guess what? Two interesting things happened. First, fatalities went down. Sometimes the counterintuitive outcome is the counterintuitive predicted outcome turns out to be the outcome. And secondly, law enforcement, hitherto silent on that question, as law enforcement ought to be. If my job is to uphold the law, my opinion on whether a law is a good law or a bad law is probably something I'm going to keep to myself. Can you imagine a law enforcement officer saying, drinking age is a terrible law? I'm not going to say that. We don't know what law enforcement thinks. We didn't know what law enforcement thought about the speed limit until after the speed limit was raised. And then all of a sudden we started coming forward. They said, now, instead of being distracted into catching people doing 65 and 55, we can redirect our attention to where the serious problems are. How does that relate? I think there should be zero tolerance and strict enforcement of underage drinking. Not 20-year-old drinking. Don't waste your time picking up some kid on a college campus, holding a can of beer, and causing no harm to himself or anybody else. Let's redeploy the person making that citation to dealing with the serious problems of underage drinking and the serious problems of drunken driving. And while that certainly isn't going to solve the problem, it seems to me that if we redirect our attention and our enforcement to genuine underage drinking, we're much more likely to succeed than if we find ourselves distracted by going after college kids who are, in most cases, causing them harm.
Question?
Hi. Here in Arkansas, we have a lot of dry counties, and I was wondering what your opinion was on this type of policy. I actually went to college in a dry county, and it was very interesting, so I'd like to hear your opinion.
Well, I've certainly, somebody who has been in this state for less than 24 hours, far be it for me to pronounce on the good or bad effects of dry counties. But I think that there is a principle at work here that we ought to keep in mind. It simply raises it a level to say that the states ought to be making these decisions rather than the federal government, because circumstances differ from state to state. Those who would quarrel with this really need to take on James Madison, not me, because I'm talking about the principle of federalism. The same is true with counties. And it seems to me that in the end, the abstract question of the feasibility and the effectiveness of prohibition can just as readily be asked in any sort of dry situation, whether that situation is a campus or a household or a county or a state or a country. They're the same basic question. I certainly would not presume to tell a particular county relative degree of moisture should be. But I would presume to say, let's just look at how successful, in fact, this proscription is. And my guess is it's less than 100% successful.
So, to make sure I understand right, in your opinion, who should handle the policy of the underage drinking? Is that like a state issue or is it a federal issue? Who should have the
Well, I mean, there are enforcement mechanisms now that are generally carried out either by local or state law enforcement. And I see no reason why that should change. What I'm proposing is that enforcing legal age 21 on those who are in all other respects adults is a distraction, and quite possibly a significant distraction of these law enforcement officers away from what in my view are much more serious problems of underage drinking.
I was just meaning like, in the steps of amending that, should the drinking age be a state law or should that be federal?
Okay, I see. If I can tell you this with absolute certainty, on the day after Congress decides to decouple the federal highway appropriations from the rights of the states to set the drinking age, there are legislators in a great many states, my own included, who would have a bill introduced to lower the age. Absolutely, absolutely. It is that incentive that has effectively created an education. If that's so good, we shouldn't need an incentive.
Judge Fleming.
The remark about dry counties makes it impossible for me to pass this up, but one of our journalists here in Arkansas several years ago, Richard Allen, wrote a book called The Southern Legislative Dictionary, in which he defined a dry county as a county in which alcohol is also served on Sundays. Perhaps the whole concept of the dry county illustrates your point that no matter what the law is, if it says you shall not drink, people will find a way to drink. But let me ask this. Do I understand your basic point that you would replace the legal age 21 with the notion of a license to drink?
Yes.
And let me ask this because that is a phrase that I've used for 10 years in lectures, basically saying you don't have to have a license to drink, and for some reason the state has said that in order to legally drive, you have to learn the law, pass a test, to prove to somebody that you can do it responsibly. But in order to legally drink, you just have to live a certain number of years. When, where, and how will we educate people to be able to pass the test with a license?
The simple answer is the state will determine that. If I could wave my wand and impose it on entirely myself, I would say no later than the 18th birthday, but there's an argument for doing it sooner. There's a strong argument, it seems to me, for doing it in conjunction with driver's education. I've heard it said recently that people assert driver's ed doesn't work. Well, I'm not going to get into that argument. The State Department of Motor Vehicles and the insurance industry seem to think that it works, and I'm not going to take exception to that. I think driver's ed does work, and it's a good analogy. So what if mandatory alcohol education, and I don't just mean books and horrifying videos and terrifying preachy lectures. That doesn't work. I mean talking with people in recovery. I mean talking with the families who have lost loved ones to alcohol. I mean learning about the impact of alcohol on brain development. I mean a very thorough course in alcohol and its effects broadly. If that were to happen at 16, you would then have had the course and you could get your license when you turn 18, but you'd have to behave for 2 years, and if you violated the alcohol laws in between, you wouldn't get your license. That might be a better age and a more effective time than to do it at age 18. But it seems to me, when we get down to this level of discussion, we're talking about what color we're going to paint it and not whether we're going to build it. And so I think when we get to the point of talking about how we're going to make this work, we have answered the fundamental question. And that would be a happy day.
Question, Steve?
Hi, thanks for being here. Do you see a link between legal age 21 and the amount of drug use in 18, 19, and 20-year-olds? Because certainly that's something we hear that other drugs, the legal drugs, are much easier to acquire than alcohol for some teenagers.
Yeah. I certainly would not want to either dispute or understate the seriousness of our drug problem. But I do think that that is separable from the alcohol issue, and for a very simple reason. Drugs are prohibited to everybody. Now, that may or may not be wise public policy, but there is no distinction between a certain segment of the population to whom it is permitted and to whom it is prohibited. Alcohol is different. And so it seems to me that when we face one of two choices, we either ban alcohol for everybody, when we tried that in the 20s and that was a great success, or we eliminate the inconsistency, the indefensible inconsistency applied to 18 to 20-year-olds. If that sounds like I'm dodging your drug question, I suppose I am. I'm much less expert on that subject, no less willing to acknowledge that it's a serious problem, but I would urge that in public policy debates be separated out from the alcohol issue, because I think it is a separate question.
Yes.
I have more of a comment. I agree with you about the 18 because I'm from Kenya, and when you're 18, you're adult, but we're taught how to drink since we're kids, so even how to brew beer. So I grew up knowing how to do that, how to drink, and none of us, don't get drunk because of alcohol, because your parents teach you. In schools, we have both drug education and all that. They would bring all the drugs, the weed, the cocaine, all that in front of the class, and you'll be taught what each does, so you get a choice on that side. Well, my question is, in your policy, are you also putting the aspect of education both in the home and in the school before you actually allow?
Yes. Our proposal is that upon turning 18, a young adult should be permitted to consume alcohol in the privacy of the home and in the presence of their parents. Only after completing high school could one get the license, because I think we do need to worry about alcohol getting into the high schools and do everything we can to reduce that likelihood. I can't resist responding to the first part of your statement, and it's a prompt to say something that I neglected to say in that presentation. There are certain questions that I can almost guarantee that if you bet the person sitting next to you, you'll win. One of those is, who's the first president of the United States? Everybody gets that wrong. It wasn't George Washington. It was John Hanson, who was the first president of the United States in Congress assembled under the Articles of Confederation. Next time you're sitting next to some stranger who wants to strike up a conversation, bet him on who the first president of the United States was. I guarantee you you'll get it wrong. Another one is, what's the second largest city in New England? Everybody gets that wrong. Nobody knows it's Worcester, Massachusetts. The third is, what are the 4 countries in the world? What are the 4 countries in the world with a 21-year-old drinking age? They are hardly ever mentioned in the same breath, except in answer to this question. Indonesia, Mongolia, Palau, and the United States. Now, somebody's got to explain to me what special insight we possess, or what special defect our population possesses to make us one of only 4 countries in the entire world with a drinking age as high as 21. For the life of me, I don't see widespread evidence of misbehavior, of brain impairment, of drunken driving. All of those other places where the age is low. Somehow or other, the cause and effect relationship exists only in this country. I don't believe that, and I think we need to put that question to the test in ways that we have for many years been unwilling to. Thank you for your comment.
One more question. Any question? Yes, Gina.
This is actually a follow-up to Juan Daly's comment. I have a lot of family in Germany and Austria, and they, across the board, think it's ludicrous that we have 21-year-old drinking age when you can be married as young as 16. You can be married but not have a glass of champagne to celebrate your own wedding. And in the United States, my cousins frequently accuse of being rather puritanical in our rules and the way that we try to control those simple things that people have in their everyday life. And alcohol is the one that they talk about the most frequently. Do you think that in the United States we have such a taboo about drinking that it adds to the curiosity that people have about drinking and creates a lot of the problems that we have with alcohol in our society?
I'm an historian, and so I'm particularly interested in what I think is the thrust of the question that you posed. And I think we have two countervailing tendencies in our society, one or the other of which tends to be dominant at one point or another. We've gone through several what I call temperance moments in the history of our country. The mid-19th century was one of them. A number of states enacted statewide prohibition laws. This occurred in conjunction with a religious revival, and there may not be a consistent correlation, but it certainly was there. We went through a similar temperance moment early in the 20th century, and the result was prohibition, and we relearned those lessons a second time. And I think we're living now in another type of temperance moment, which may or may not have anything to do with religious revivals taking place in our country as well. There is, on the one hand, this, and I don't mean to use these terms pejoratively, I really don't, moralistic, puritanical, lowercase p, perfectionist tendency that's been present from the day John Whitman talked about a city on the hill. And then there is the more God loves us despite rather than God loves us because point of view that acknowledges the reality of alcohol and seeks to temper its effects rather than its presence. And one side or the other in that debate tends to be seen, I think, for the last 20 years, the more perfectionist strand has been ascending. You know the story of Johnny Appleseed? Jonathan Chapman puts a tin pan on his head and goes out across the country planting apple trees. There's a wonderful book called The Botany of Desire. If you haven't read it, I recommend it. There's a chapter in there about apples. You know what Johnny Appleseed was doing and why he was so popular and why he was in such demand? Why everybody wanted apples? The concept of apple as a healthful, nutritious food is a very recent origin. And it was largely a response to the last temperance moment in our history. Those folks on the frontier wanted apples to make cider, to make hard cider, to make alcohol. And Johnny Appleseed was the hero to generations of Americans who needed a sufficient apple crop in order to make hard cider. And after all, when we think about it, it was an apple that made us imperfect. And that long ago, apple has always had the connotation of evil until relatively recent times. So in that particular respect, alcohol was very much a presence and not thought to be a negative presence at all for a great many Americans living on the frontier of the 19th century. You all have been a wonderful audience. Thank you for your questions. If you are interested in learning more about us, or even if you're interested in joining our ranks and taking on a more active role, we would welcome that involvement. Our website is chooseresponsibility.org, and I look forward to continuing this conversation with you and with our fellow citizens as often as possible.
Let's thank